Here with their reaction, Mark Halperin, editor-in-chief of Two-Way, and Byron York, Fox News contributor. Byron, let's start with you. It's almost an obsession at this point. Other than John Fetterman, I think they're addicted to their lines that they tried last year with Trump. They didn't work, but I guess they're just out of ideas or other strategies. What explains this?
Well, the Tyler Robinson charging documents was extremely thorough and extremely convincing and really cannot be read any other way than that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk over Kirk's political beliefs. There's just no way to read that document and not see that. But, you know, to paraphrase, beliefs are stubborn things. A lot of people on the progressive left believe that we don't do that kind of thing. They do that kind of thing. And when someone clearly on their side has done this, I think they simply can't accept it. So they say, well, he was really MAGA, or he was a gamer, or he was in love. I mean, he was just lovesick. So if it weren't so serious, it would be funny. But they cannot accept what is in front of their face right now.
Yeah, I mean, if we change the fact pattern and it were different politically, we know the same people would be screaming, and I don't know of anyone who would be celebrating the death of anyone based on political views or anything like that. Mark Halperin, your reaction to the Democrats' attempt to try to grapple with this, especially someone you covered for 8 years, Barack Obama.
I watched the clip of his remarks today, and I found it nothing short of stunning. Look, as Barack Obama would say, look, not surprising. A party that's moved to the far left and for 10 years has not understood the appeal of Donald Trump and has failed to grapple, as Pogo would say, that the enemy is them. Donald Trump's a great politician. He's done a lot of smart things tactically and strategically, but he won 2 out of 3 presidential elections because the Democratic Party has failed to understand where it's out of step with the American people. It takes a lot at this point in my career to stun me. And I will say I am stunned and shocked by their failure to, and in the clip with President Obama, their failure to understand just how painful this is for people in this country who knew Charlie Kirk. And they continue to not understand him. They don't know what he accomplished. They don't know his heart. They don't know what he's about. And they're continuing to operate on one principle. If Donald Trump feels something, they hate it.
And I think it's also kind of this hostility that cut against what Obama in part campaigned upon in 2008. Remember, he said he was for traditional marriage. Remember that? So that Barack Obama would also be an enemy to this current mindset of the Democrat Party and a lot of these activists who are going crazy celebrating Charlie. So it's an unbelievable transformation of the Democrat Party. But Byron, I want to get to the big news tonight, which is that ABC is pulling Jimmy Kimmel off the air after he made this remark about Charlie.
The MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Byron.
Well, ABC is a network that broadcasts on television stations that are mostly owned by other companies. And apparently one of the biggest station owners in the country said they were not going to air the Kimmel Show anymore after this. You know, I think with him, as it was with Stephen Colbert earlier, this was really a cumulative thing. And I think that Jimmy Kimmel didn't seem to understand that it's not 2017 anymore. If you think back to the terrible days of 2017 when the entire media was saying Russia, Russia, Russia 24/7. It dominated everything. This is a different atmosphere today. Of course, Trump is still controversial. Of course, there is still a resistance. But this is a serious presidency. They are failing to grapple with that. And now they're also obviously failing to grapple with the ugly violence that has arisen here with 2 assassination attempts on Trump and now the killing of Charlie Kirk.
Your reaction to this news, Mark, we'll be learning more about it, but what we know so far.
Well, it's incredible that the Walt Disney Company, which for many, many years has allowed The View and Jimmy Kimmel to take up 2 hours of real estate to appeal to the big stations in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, where the audiences are more liberal. And now at least one station group, and I believe it's at least 2, where their stations are in more rural areas and not in the big coastal cities, have said no. A comment like that in the current environment, less than a week after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, is not acceptable. And the fact that ABC did that under some pressure from the FCC, but more under pressure from station owners, is a watershed. Again, in the history of a company that pumped out The View, anti-Trump for a decade, Jimmy Kimmel, anti-Trump for a decade, no equal time for MAGA, no equal time for conservative voices. This was a bridge too far under the circumstances, and it's of a piece with what we're seeing, which is some government coercion, but also just the market is speaking. Conservatives watch TV too, and they found that unacceptable.
And Byron, to those who say, oh, this is cancel culture, now you're embracing cancel culture. I hit this last night, but I want to give you the chance to hit that ridiculously stupid retort to what we're talking about.
Well, I think Mark is right in the sense that the market is speaking in this case. And obviously, making a joke, any joke, about this assassination at this time just seems to be incredibly reckless, and making one based on a libelous falsehood is even worse. So he obviously did not get, the comedian here did not get the feelings of the mass of his audience. He was so used to resistance narrowcasting, which is what the late night shows had become, that he lost track of that.
Yeah, they ceased to be funny because they ceased to connect with the American people. They should go back and watch Carson and then maybe find their senses of humor. Mark and Byron, great to have both of you on together. Thanks so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.